Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Good afternoon, good morning. I suspect not many good nights. Thank you for taking the time to join us here. So my name is Ryan Graham. I'm part of the team here at PropFuel. I'll just kind of give everyone a minute. I see everyone kind of filing in, so we'll give everyone just a moment to come on in. While we're doing that, I'll just go over a few housekeeping items. So. We'll probably end up going for, I don't know, 35 to 40 minutes today. It probably won't take the whole hour, in all honesty. If you have questions, you can feel free to write them into the chat or the Q&A. And as I see those come in, I'm going to try to hop over to those to dig into them as they're coming in versus holding them all to the end. So feel free to write in with chat with questions or different points that you want to make, things like that. And I think that's probably it. Actually, one other thing, and Robson, you can post this link in. So something else, just quickly to mention it in concert with the webinar. So if what we talk about today, behind the aspect of what PropFuel does interests you, you can. We're going to post a link into the chat where you can book a demo with PropFuel, and I'll talk more about that at the end of the webinar. But if you're looking for that over the course of the webinar, it'll be there in the chat. All right, I see a lot of people are in, so we can get rolling. So again, welcome. This is PropFuel's webinar, Web Personalization, Why It Matters and How PropFuel Makes It Easy. So I'm Ryan Graham. I lead the sales and marketing team here at PropFuel. I've had the pleasure of being in the association space for close to 20 years, all on the vendor side of things. Heavily focused on things related to member experience, engagement. Spent a lot of time at an LMS, or like a learning management system company that we had prior to PropFuel. So I've seen a lot of stuff, especially in terms of like the evolution of technology within associations, a lot of the trends and various kind of changes over time. So I live in Kansas City. I'm married with 3 kiddos and 2 dogs. So if you hear stuff going on in my background, just give me a nod of grace. In terms of what we're going to be talking about, so I want to summarize this with kind of 3 points in terms of how I want to organize this. So first, we're going to start with why website engagement and personalization from a website standpoint is important. Why does it matter? Secondly, we're going to talk about the common roadblocks, or where associations kind of get stuck. And then lastly, I'm going to walk through a few different kind of examples of ways that PropFuel clients have implemented PropFuel to kind of solve for this, and how PropFuel helps in this regard. Quickly, just if you don't know who PropFuel is, I'm going to spend 30 seconds here. So basically, PropFuel is an engagement, a company that has an engagement and personalization product. We work with over 300 associations who are our clients of PropFuel, and we are extremely focused on this idea of what we call conversational engagement. So the best way to engage your member, your prospective member, anyone in your ecosystem, isn't to just bombard them with information. It's to ask them a question like a real conversation would, capture insight from that real time, and use that to then take immediate and then longer term action. So that is kind of the guiding, principle or philosophy behind the approach that we take with our product. And we basically do that over email, text message and SMS, and through website are the 3 channels in which we do that through. All right, so the problem with websites today. So the overarching problem isn't that you're not putting the right information on your website naturally. It's that way too many association websites are focused on the information. They're focused at bombarding people with information, at talking at members, but not conversing with them. So we talk a lot about this idea of, members really want to have guidance. They don't want to just be kind of thrown into an experience where they're having to do their own sifting and filtering. We also talk a lot about the idea of the invisible visitor. So the invisible visitor is is, when we talk with associations, we talk about like, hey, how are you reporting on your website? Or, how are you trying to measure or understand who's on your website? Pretty much every association says the same thing, which is we use Google Analytics, and you could have any content management system out there from, really basic ones like, Drupal or WordPress to more, complex content management systems, or, a CMS through your or through your AMS, like an IMS Rise, or, anything like that. But it's typically the same thing, which is we look at, the fact that we have 20,000 website visitors, and we look at the bounce rate. We look at how many pages they're viewing, and that's pretty much it. We feel like we're staring into a black hole. And so the folks that are on your website become invisible in the sense that they're just interacting at a behavioral level. You don't get the ability to have real insight and a real kind of, feedback loop. And so that's what we want to really focus on. Part of this is there's very much the illusion that more is better. Like I'm sure this picture is circa 1995, probably related to the McDonald's Monopoly game, which I think there was Netflix about that, and it may or may not have been a scam. But regardless, the illusion that more is better is so pervasive in the association space, in the sense that this is just kind of a mock, fictitious association website. But a lot of association websites look like this. The premise is, hey, here's our homepage or a specific page, and this happens to be a member benefit page. Let's just basically throw everything that we do out onto this page. So what this would kind of align with, if you think back to the idea of having a conversation with someone, and we say this a lot, is let's say you meet a new member face to face. You happen to have that opportunity to do so, and you say, "Hey, welcome, member. It's so great to have you here. Hey, here is on this table. I'm going to throw 40 folders out. These folders represent all the different member benefits that we have. And then I'm going to watch you sift through those folders one by one by one by one by one." Obviously, what's happening is the member is becoming overwhelmed. And I think what happens is a lot of associations think about, let's pack pages full of content and text and information, because the more we put there, the better, or the higher likelihood that maybe the prospective member will be able to find the thing that they're looking for. But the reality is that actually works against you. And here's a really good kind of interesting example of it. So if anyone's familiar, this is called the JAM study. So a number of years ago, a grocery store did basically 2 tasting sessions. So in one session, they basically had the shoppers choose from 24 different flavors of jam. And then they wanted to see how many of them, what percentage of the shoppers purchased a jam. And then, because the idea is like, hey, 24, we're going to be catering to more flavors. We're going to be catering to more, unique interests and, preferences and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, that's the one that has to garner higher conversion from a purchase standpoint, naturally, right? Then they did a separate tasting, and they had 6 choices, so fewer choices, and the numbers completely surprised them. But I think this is a great representative example. So in the 24 choice tasting, only 3% of the shoppers purchased a jam. In the 6 choice tasting, 30% of the shoppers purchased the jam. The psychological aspect of this is something that we can't overlook, which is when people are given simplicity and guidance, they have more confidence. Things make more sense. They're better organized in their brain. When they're presented with a lot of choices, a lot of examples, a lot of filtering to be required, or searching, or kind of sifting through things, what happens is they start to guess more. They start to lose their focus, and ultimately they're less engaged. And this is so common in terms of what I think we know and what we see, but what is really hard to actually pinpoint down. And so again, the idea is more guidance equals more confidence, more options equals more guessing, and watering down from an engagement standpoint. Now, why this matters is that ultimately what happens without real engagement on your website is, as an organization, you're missing an opportunity to guide people. You're missing, so think of a prospective member. Prospective member comes to your website and they're maybe sure, maybe unsure what they're looking for. There's an opportunity to not present them with the 30 things that your association does, because reality is 28 of those probably don't matter to that person. When in reality, what does matter is what aligns with their needs, their interests, their preferences. So what we want to do is we want to guide them. Ultimately, the current approach really just kind of leads to lower conversion. It leads to people kind of stepping away from things. And inherently, what happens on, with regard to your website and trying to analyze visitors and all that sort of stuff is there's really no insight. There's no true data to analyze. There's data that you can guess at, but there isn't a lot that you can really pin down and say, this is why people aren't doing more with this page. This is why people aren't doing more with this value proposition to convert. This is why people aren't registering for this event, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's, an aspect of this is, oftentimes, when someone, if let's say you have a registration page, what happens is someone clicks and they register and they convert. So they basically tell you yes. And what happens is we bias towards that yes a lot of times, in the sense that what most associations don't do, because they don't have the data and they don't have the tools to do it, is they never understand, why are people saying no? Because the no is a very quiet thing. The no is not clicking to register or not clicking and not following through the process. There's no ability to capture that no. There's only the ability to say, yeah, people are converting, they're clicking to register, and they're telling us yes. And then all of this naturally has downstream effects. So some of those effects are things like lost revenue, retention, staff wasting a lot of time in terms of like guessing at what people want, creating more pages, more content. A lot of that is just spinning cycles, and it's kind of, throwing spaghetti against the wall in a sense. And ultimately, what ends up happening a lot of times is you kind of put undue pressure in some of your other channels. So naturally, what's happening, like if you aren't getting the conversions and the activity and the engagement that you want on your website, all right, let's send another email. Let's send another 3 emails. Let's jam more into email, more content blocks in that email, because you're not getting what you want and you don't have the you don't have the platform intelligence, not people intelligence, platform intelligence, to understand why those things aren't happening. So what could engagement kind of look like? And I want to use a really good consumer example. I don't actually happen to shop. Maybe I've had a jacket from Marmot at some point. I know there's people here at PropFuel that I'm sure have Marmot stuff, because we have some people that like climb mountains and do things like that. And I don't do any of that stuff. But this is a great example of what Marmot, I think that's how you pronounce it, a consumer clothing company did. So basically, they have hundreds of jackets. Now, instead of showing the hundreds of jackets, and most clothing companies, consumer focused companies, what they do is they have, naturally the page. And like if I go on to, Adidas and I'm looking for sneakers, I do a little bit of filtering, go to the men's, sneakers. Maybe I'll filter it down to size, 12 and a half or 13. And then I'm just kind of rolling through the page, sifting for what I want. And, I'm looking through hundreds or, tens of at least shoes. And that's a time consuming process. What they wanted to do is they put a quiz that you can't even, in the context of when they were doing this, you couldn't even get to all of their jackets page. They put a quiz in front of it. And it basically says, what fit are you looking for? And then it branches to different things. So when you say men or women, then it's going to branch to, and I forget exactly what it did. Like, are you looking for something that is for performance or for, day to day? And then there was maybe another question. Ultimately, what this did was, and I think it was something like 3 or 4 questions potentially. What this did is it drilled things down in such a way that it presented you with your, call it, personalized options, the options that best align with what you answered, versus kind of the site guessing at it and maybe not serving up the best experience. This resulted in pretty remarkable conversions. So ultimately, a 47% lift in conversions when they looked at conversions from this experience to conversions to the other experience, where it's just a big filtered page, in periods of time. 34% lift, that should be lift, in average order value. Basically, people were having more confidence. Therefore, they spent more time. They invested themselves more. They spent more money. They were more willing to spend. 18% increase in time on the site. And again, this is a kind of a symptom of that confidence through the guidance, not the guessing. And 8.5 times ROI from a single experience. So basically, everything lifted. Basically, the time that people were spending on Marmot's site was more valuable. And so, what we want to ultimately do, what engagement, we think what engagement can look like, it can look like basically, someone coming to your site and a simple, hey, what are you looking for? Are you looking to become a member, become certified, register for an event, volunteer, something else? And then guide them to that experience. Give them some annotation or some kind of guidance of what they can do from there. Ultimately, what that leads to is members who are just having a better experience, are happier, are more willing to engage and follow up from that. So great example. And what I think of a lot when I think of that is I think of our friend Reggie Henry, if y'all know him from ASAE, and the words that he often says kind of echoing in my head, which is basically your members' experience your members' expectation that they are bringing to your association is guided by their last experience as a consumer. So they're having that experience with Marmot, Amazon, any other vendor in that, Stitch Fix, for example, is highly focused on personalization. They're now bringing that lens, that frame, that expectation to the experience that they have with your association. So there's a huge opportunity to level that up, to get on a similar kind of playing field from that standpoint. I'm just going to quickly look at the chat and the Q&A just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, good. I'm not. All right. So from this standpoint now, what I want to do is I want to talk about how PropFuel helps in this regard. So again, the core idea that we focus on is this idea of asking a member a question, getting a response, and really guiding them through an experience. So a few different examples here that I want to walk through. This is a client, VEX, the Veterinary Emergency Clinical Care Society. So basically what they did is they used our website engagement product. They also use SMS through PropFuel, and they also use email. And they complement. All those three of those products complement each other as an umbrella platform. Part of this is we integrate with the AMS, we integrate with the other systems that an association has in place, and that basically gives us the ability to leverage all of that data to do better and deeper segmentation and things like that. In this case, what they were focused on is they just wanted to increase conference registration. So what we did was we used a PropFuel pop-up on their conference site, which was ivex.org. And it was a simple kind of, what you might call a conference registration / kind of wayfinding question through PropFuel. Now, just mechanically, to talk about this for a minute, I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is a very low technical, zero code endeavor using this product. So what this client and none of our clients are having to do is inject code onto pages or do anything like that. It's a very simple, low, no code implementation of this. And basically that allows you to then take PropFuel interactions, which interaction for us is kind of an umbrella term over a pop-up, what we call an inline interaction where it fits into the structure of the page, or a banner, and basically display those on any of your pages with really, simple to complex, just there's a scale, conditions to say, hey, show it to this group of people who have never been to your website, or this group of people who meet the criteria that they're logged in, they're a member, and they've been to your website for, 5 different times over the last 6 months. You can get really, really complex with these things. This was a really simple one. Basically, just what brings you to the IVEX site today? And then they gave people different options. So I want to look at the schedule. They've already registered. I want to register, scholarships and grants, volunteer, and you can see all the different, things there. So the first thing when we talk about like data and conversion, because this was a really interesting one. So basically, this was popped up to over I forget the exact number, but over 20,000 different website visitors for this site. 27% of them interacted with the question. That's a huge number. So if you're not familiar, which most people wouldn't be naturally, with like pop-ups and kind of benchmarking metrics. So on average, across all industries, about the average response rate, for lack of a better term, to a pop-up is about 3%, give or take a little bit on either side. We see a higher average with our clients. This client saw a 27% response rate, which is huge. So what that says is this pop-up on the first page when you get to the site, this is aligned with what people were looking for. Like this was right up their alley. They were looking for very simple guidance. So 20%, 27% response. You can see the different responses here. So what PropFuel does is we then benchmark and show you metrics on the different responses. So specifically, 36% of those respondents said they wanted to register. This garnered $315,000 in revenue generated from this one question that was running for, 45 to 60 days on their site. It was huge from an engagement standpoint. And then basically what's really powerful about this too is then each one of these responses will do something direct. So in this context, just for a little bit of background, this was served up to anonymous website visitors on this site. We can also serve these up to identified website visitors. We have a few different ways to identify website visitors, but in this context, they're anonymous. So there's still things that we can do with this, but basically the journey, the experience that is being created here is when you answer any one of these, it's going to bring you to a related page on that site. So if I say I want to volunteer at the IVEX conference, it's going to bring you to this page. And then this is a PropFuel pop-up where it's going to give you a little bit of a kind of guidance or navigation around the next step and what you can do if you have questions. And then we can do retargeting on this. So even though this is an anonymous visitor, we can still retarget them because we are cookieing with a first-party cookie this anonymous individual. So we know it's an anonymous individual, but it's this anonymous individual. And they answer the question saying they want to do this related to the conference. So next time this person comes back to the site, we could ask them, hey, were you able to sign up to volunteer? Or if they said they wanted to register, we could say, hey, do you have any, do you need any help with your registration? Or again, any one of these answers. So we can be really focused with how we engage that person. And again, the key to this, that is, it's subtle, but as you kind of peel the layers of it back, it's pretty substantial, is we're not doing this on the basis of guesswork, meaning we're not saying, hey, we looked through your window while you were looking at our website. You went to the registration page. Do you want to register? That's weird. That's obnoxious. What we're doing is we're asking them a very specific question, getting a definitive answer that has what I would call high fidelity to it, high clarity, because it's right from the voice of the member. And then we're using that to guide and personalize their experience. Completely different than kind of the lurking approach. That's the international signal for lurking, apparently. I am going to answer a quick question that came in. So interested to know how you can identify visitors. We use IMIS for our single sign-on. So wondering how and if we can identify visitors based upon their authentication on our website. Yeah, so there's two ways that we can identify visitors. That is the primary one. So is authentication through single sign-on. So we have have integrations with all of the different AMS systems that includes IMIS. And so we can tie into your SSO. So when someone logs into your site, that can authenticate, and that can then kind of append the cookie, the PropFuel cookie, to serve in their identified data. So what then you can do with that, for example, is you can set conditions that say, hey, here's a campaign. And we have clients doing this right now actively, where they'll say, like, here's a campaign, and I want to feed into this that when people are logged in, and if they, for example, are on this, in IMIS terms, on this IQA query, which has rules that say that their renewal date is coming up in the next 90 days, just for argument's sake, then I want to pop up this question to them saying, hey, are you planning on renewing your membership? And all of that is done just basically in the handshake between the authentication and passing that through to PropFuel. So they come in and we know it's that person that meets that criteria, and we just serve them up to them that experience. So we have that in place with IMIS, and that's all part of the fabric of the integration today. So yeah, really good question. One other question. So what are the best strategies for getting folks logged into an association site and keeping them logged in? Yeah, that's a really good question. So in concert with answering that, let me talk to the second way in which we can identify visitors. So PropFuel we also have an email product where we do everything that we're showing here, but we do it over email. And when we're doing it over email, we know exactly who the person is, because you're basically putting conditions into PropFuel that say, hey, if people meet this criteria, they're in this IQA query, or if it's in Salesforce, Fontiva, Nimble language, they meet this contact or account field, then add them to this campaign. And we'll send them an email with a question, and all the interaction happens behind that. We know exactly who we're sending that email to. So if you lead someone from a one-click answer from a PropFuel email to your website, we can cookie them and use the identified data from your system of record, your AMS, to identify who that person is moving forward on your website now. So you can do all of the identified segmentation and targeting and all that stuff without forcing members to log in. You can use PropFuel to do all that stuff with the handshake and the handoff from a PropFuel email to your website. So that's one thing. Getting folks motivated to log into your website, I could probably spend a lot of time on that, but I think a lot of it is about the value proposition in this, and a lot of what PropFuel can do is help in that regard. So I'll actually give you a quick example. We have a sorry, it's going to take me just 2 seconds to pull this up. So we have kind of a demo site where we have some of these different things kind of set up, and I'm going to do the thing that you should never do, which is go off script and show some of this. So for example, this is a good example where this is just kind of mocked up, but this is a PropFuel banner at the bottom, and it's saying, are you a member? So if I answer no to this, what it's going to do is it's going to bring me to a page, and instead of showing me the 30 member benefits, it's going to say, hey, what's your primary professional goal? I'm going to say I want to become certified. And then you can actually use PropFuel to contact the capture data about the individual. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. If I answered yes to this, we'll refresh it. If I answered yes to this, what it's going to do is it's going to bring me here. And I just kind of did this in a very basic way, but it's going to say, hey, thanks for being a member. By logging in, you get access to over 100 articles, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. What you have to do in order to get folks logged in is you have to express the compelling nature of what they get when they're logged in. And so that's a core part of it. And now PropFuel is really good at helping people to get to that. So understanding if they're a member or a non-member. So that's like a core aspect of like the wayfinding kind of element of PropFuel, is understanding that, and then telling them about the member benefits, or maybe asking like, what member benefit do you find most valuable, as a second question, and then telling them, hey, by logging in, you get exclusive access to this, and here's what it's going to do for you. So PropFuel can kind of lead down that journey. One other question is, do you have any metrics on the success of tying to renewal with a certain date? Let me come back to that. So that has a lot of kind of layers to it. We do 100%, but I'm going to come back to that one. Really good question. All right, so here's a website wayfinding example that's really good. So again, someone comes to the website, and we're basically saying, hey, why did you come to the website today? And again, what we want to do with this is this is an opportunity to tease out, is the person a member, is the person a non-member? So if they answer membership information, we know it's a prospective member. Whereas if they answer any of these others, they could be either one, but still, it gives an opportunity here. And basically, this got a 10%, a little bit over a 10% response rate with all of these different responses associated with it. So like, and this actually surprised this client a lot. They thought they were going to get a little bit different numbers here. And this is the value of this, is being able to understand this and then serve up an experience to people and then iterate on that by retargeting them on the basis of what they've answered here. So this is just a really valuable example. I'm going to skip over some of this. So here's another really good example from Association of Legal Administrators. So this is kind of in that realm of wayfinding as well. So basically, what brings you to ALA's site today? Now, something you can see here, just to show you, is we have a lot of flexibility where we can put these. So a PropFuel pop-up can go on the center of the page, the center bottom. It can go on the bottom right like this. It can go anywhere, and it can have a very dynamic style to fully match your website. What we're also not doing is interstitials where it locks the page down. That's obnoxious. Like, we don't want to sacrifice the member experience to the point where we're now locking it down in order to get people to answer the question. It's a horrible experience. So no one wants that. So just that's a really important aspect of this too. So in this context, they were able to determine that 1 in 5 out of their homepage website visitors are exploring membership, and 1 in 10 are interested in certification, which is data they never had prior to this. They actually thought that people were coming to their site primarily for events. So they had never even factored in some of these things with regard to membership and certification. And something that's really valuable in this context is they have a new AMS where they're serving up a different experience now. And that's part of what we're also guiding people around too, is, hey, like, have you logged in and personalized your new AMS profile? They don't call it that, but your new, MyLA profile or whatever it is. So in this context, they found this to be extremely valuable, because again, what we're doing is we're cutting cycles for people. We're not making them jump through all these hoops to get to this stuff. Something that they're also doing is on their upcoming events and education page, ALA, is they are using PropFuel to understand the educational path that best aligns with the goals of an individual. But then they're also using that in converting anonymous visitors into identified contacts. So part of the functionality that PropFuel brings for this is we have the ability to ask a question and then layer on to that the capture of a person's email and name. So in this case, I answer this and I say, hey, fundamentals, up to 5 years in legal management career. I give them my name, I give them my email. So now what's going to happen is PropFuel is going to look into the PropFuel database that's integrated with their AMS for this client. And it's going to say, hey, this email address, do we have a record on file for this? If the answer is yes, we're then going to take this response, merge it into that, and we know that moving forward, that person is this identified individual. So we know who they are, and we've merged their responses and any previous responses with that identified record. If the answer is no, we create a new prospect record for that person in PropFuel that can be synced back to your AMS or brought into your AMS. But now we have the ability to basically take someone who is an anonymous visitor and convert them to an identified individual. And we can take that person now and we can run them through an email campaign or an SMS campaign or a future website campaign. And that's really powerful because all this stuff is tying through together. And now what you're doing is you're taking these anonymous visitors and you're creating new records for people that you may never have had, which are extremely valuable. And you're attaching insight from their answer to that. So you're not just starting with like a blank record, a person, an email. You're starting with like this record of here's this person, here's their contact, and here's what we know about them now. Here's their career stage, their interest, their whatever it is in terms of that question. And then we can build on that and nurture them on that basis. Clients are absolutely loving that. Someone just asked, do you have examples of what associations you're doing once they have some of this data? Yeah, and I think that actually answered some of it. It depends on whether it's an anonymous or an identified visitor. If it's identified, then we're using that in the scope of the spectrum of everything that we're doing. We're carrying that into nurturing them over email. So if we know that someone is identified and they say, "Hey, I'm in executive leadership and this, and this," then we'll go back to them over email with a question. And if they don't answer it over email, when they come back to the website, we'll ask them a question there, or maybe do it over text message and SMS if they're opted in there. So like the value of this is getting this data in one place magnifies the ability to use it through these other channels. But then also iterate on it or peel back additional layers, because just because we have one answer or insight doesn't mean we have the whole spectrum. We want to continue to kind of peel that back to get people where they want to go with their member experience. And then also as an association, convert them and drive them in the ways that we're looking for people to be driven. All right, before I get to this example, I'm going to answer another question or two. So how does this tool differ from AI chatbots that organizations may have on their website that may be integrated with their AMS? What does PropFuel do better? Yeah, so it is very different in that a chatbot is more of a live chat interface that is requiring an input from the member of the website visitor in order to get somewhere, and then it's taking them through this live stream of logic. So let's say I'm on a chatbot, that the client has, and let me say on top of this, a lot of our clients have chatbots and are still using PropFuel. Sometimes they're even using PropFuel to feed into their AI chatbot, or we have integrations with Betty where you can feed it into Betty. So what PropFuel is doing different than that is we're using logic to be able to place these interactions and these questions on specific pages where we see that there might be smoke. Smoke is like, we know that, and PropFuel has website analytics. So when you install PropFuel on your website, as part of our platform, we will serve up to you analytics where we'll show you like, hey, over the last month, this page is your most viewed page on your website. So that would be smoke, meaning like a little bit of a something there. The events and education page has 25% of your traffic. So what we want to do is we want to then put a little bit of a kind of prompt there in terms of a question. Hey, why did you come to this page? Or what topic of learning or what format of learning are you interested in? So we're already starting it with something versus kind of an open chatbot is just kind of there and always on. And it requires more to interact with that. PropFuel has a much, much lighter touch than a chatbot and is really trying to do something a little bit different than that ultimately. I hope that helps to kind of answer the question. All right, last kind of example that I'm going to talk through here is VPPPA. So they use PropFuel for conference registration. And again, similar to these other examples, we got a 14% engagement rate. What was really interesting about this is we were also able to capture that no side of it. So again, when even if you have a pop-up on your website, the pop-up is register now for annual conference. There's no ability to collect the negative or the rebuttal to it, or the side of why people don't want to go. They'll just click out of it. Or if you send the email, register now. So that's the power in this, is we're getting both sides of the exchange, so you can make adjustments and create things that are relevant to what your members and prospective members are looking for. So basically they're saying, hey, will we see you there? And so along these lines, what we then got out of it is probably about 35 or so percent said, no, I'm not interested. And so we were able to then understand the barriers, or the client was able to understand the barriers in terms of the things around timing, pricing, travel, other priorities that were holding people back. And they're able to now put meaningful changes in place for next year, some of them for this year, but for next year especially, to align with the reasons people weren't going. And they were able to, of the people that said yes and registered, if I remember correctly, a big portion of them, I want to say upwards of 40+% of the people that registered from this were first-time registrants. That was really significant because now they're reaching this new audience that isn't the mainstay people that are always registering for the safety conference in this context. All right, a couple questions and then we'll kind of wrap things up. So can you give an example of how PropFuel and Betty work together? So if you're not familiar with Betty, Betty is um, a privatized, AI platform in the association space. What it does is it consumes all of your content in terms of like your resources, all of the different, text associated with your website and your different, web properties, LMS, community, etc. And it then basically gives you the ability for members to interact with that, to get them to the right places, in a sense. Probably a little bit simplistic, but it's like a privatized kind of smart LLM for associations. And so, a really good example of how PropFuel interfaces with Betty, and we actually have a really good case study to this. Robson, if you can find that case study, do you mind posting it to the chat? Um, so the case study that we have is PropFuel. We had a client who wanted to had some new legislation coming down, and what they wanted is they wanted their members to be able to create a personalized letter and send it to their state rep. And so basically, what they did was they asked a PropFuel question, used the through the integration that PropFuel has with their AMS, use personalized data about like it was for a teachers association, their tenure, and some of those different things. And then what they did was we have an integration where we can take any answer from PropFuel and we can use that to feed a prompt into Betty. And then Betty will we will redirect to Betty, and Betty will automatically be working on the chat response to that prompt. So basically, someone answered a PropFuel question, and then PropFuel is kind of the middle piece that is taking the answer to the question and the context related to that, along with what we know about that individual, again, background data and all that sort of stuff. And we're feeding that into a custom prompt into Betty. They were able to generate out of this, I forget exactly, but I want to say something like 7,000 personalized letters, because basically what Betty would then do is create a letter for that person and then give them the ability to copy it, paste it into email, and then send it off to their state rep. And it was, relevant, personalized, and the member didn't have to do the manual legwork. All they had to do was answer a PropFuel question, and then between PropFuel and Betty, we did the rest of the work for them. That was huge. They actually were able to eliminate an advocacy platform. They were spending about $8,000 on a year by using that. Tons of different examples and ways that you can use PropFuel in a similar fashion. All right, bear with me for 3 more minutes. There was another question that was asked here. Do you have metrics on the success of tying to renewal within a certain date? So there's lots of ways that I can answer that, but yes. So the timeliness of the renewal communication, maybe not even specifically the timeliness, but the ask related to the timeliness. So oftentimes what happens is when you have renewal going on, and this is cross-channel, you can use this approach. PropFuel uses this approach over email, text, and website. What we don't want to do is send them an email or pop up on the website that says your membership's renewing, click here to renew, because we first want to start with their intent. Like, hey, your membership's coming up to renew on this date, and PropFuel has all the automation to capture this from the AMS and serve all this up. Hey, your membership's renewing on this date. Do you plan on renewing your membership? Yes or no? And then based upon that, what member benefit do you value the most? So then we can serve up a relevant experience to them. That's where PropFuel is really, really powerful. It is very common that clients come in, and a lot of our clients start with lapsed member win back and renewal campaigns, and they are easily able to, in the first 30 to 60 days, pay for the total cost of PropFuel with those renewal and lapsed member campaigns. It's nothing for clients to come in and increase their retention rate and renewal rate by 3 to 7% in their first year with PropFuel. Thank you, Robson, for posting that. Or something similar in that regard. So that is, yeah, absolutely, and happy to talk more about that specifically. All right, so last thing is, if you want to schedule time to meet with us for a demo, if you want to learn more about PropFuel, basically what we do is walk through PropFuel for 30 to 45 minutes, talk about it specific to your association. What I will tell you is if you book a demo with us today, we will totally waive our setup fees. So we have a setup fee that includes our onboarding, which is a fully managed onboarding with a dedicated client success manager. It's a really hands-on 2.5 to 3 month process where we're walking you through all the stages. That also includes our integrations with your AMS, your marketing automation system, your Betty, Feather, Association Analytics, etc. So that's typically that's anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000. So if you book a demo with us today and then you ultimately become a PropFuel client, no strings attached, of course, we will totally waive that setup and onboarding fee for you. So I hope that's helpful. Let me see if we have any further questions, and if not, we can kind of wrap things up. Rob, so I don't think I see any other questions or anything in the chat. Let's see. No, I think that's it. All right, cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for the time today. I hope this was helpful, and super excited to have the opportunity to speak with your organization. Best of luck with everything, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye.